Hi Alyssa, this is Crystal. So this is just me replying to the video feedback that you gave for my lesson. So I just wanted to thank you for looking over my lesson and for all the nice comments that you put. So I'll just dive right into it. So when I was changing up my lesson, I went ahead and I took off the blue text that we were supposed to take off, so that way our lesson plan looks a little bit cleaner. I also went ahead and changed quite a bit of my lesson. So one thing that you said in your feedback to me was to maybe add some of the pictures that I put or that I was going to have in the PowerPoint when I was giving the engage portion for my students, where they're giving me basically a thumbs up or a thumbs down whether something is living or non-living. And so I added some sample pictures on my lesson now to kind of give someone who's reading my lesson plan an idea of what kind of pictures I'd be using. I also, like I said, I changed that part where before I wanted the students to chorally respond living or non-living, but I decided to go against that because I felt that, you know, if students are just shouting living, they might just say that because they heard another student say it, so they just want to say living even though they might not actually know. So I felt with a thumbs up and it's like quiet, the students are really forced to think for themselves. So I changed that part for the engage. As far as the explore, I changed pretty much all of it. I thought about what you said, and you suggested it for the explain portion, but you said that maybe to get my students moving around, I could have them kind of identify objects in the classroom that are living or non-living, and I really like that idea. So I went ahead and I changed what I had originally planned for the explore, and I'm having them play a game where they are paired up into partners, and they are really just walking around the classroom with their partner, pointing out, okay, this is a living thing, and they have to explain to each other how they know that that thing is living or non-living. Let's see. Something else that I changed. Oh, so but the reason of that being where they're moving around and having to explain to each other how they know that it's living or non-living is because I really wanted to build that, like, the discourse, that science talk, so they can be able to explain their thinking and really just elaborate on how they know that something is living or non-living. And so if you look in the textbook on page 277, it says that just as important as specialized science vocabulary is the way language is used to learn and talk about science, so the discourse of science, students learn to ask questions and form hypotheses just as scientists do. Students make predictions and come up with explanations. So that's basically what I was trying to get at. I wanted my students to be able to not just identify the difference between living and non-living things, but to understand how they know that there is a difference, so they can really get that thinking going. Let's see. Another thing was that during my elaborate, I was having the students color and, well, sort pictures of living and non-living things, and then coloring and cutting them out and gluing them into their science journal. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I wanted them to really differentiate living versus non-living things. Some of them may have known, like that there are living things and non-living things, but just using those terms, sometimes they'd get confused thinking non-living meant something was living and something living also meant living, so they weren't really too sure. They were a little bit confused. So I really wanted them during that sort to be able to understand, okay, non-living means things that are not living and things that are living are living. So one of the things that it says on page 278, right, notes that even non-ELLs must learn new concepts and content-specific vocabulary in science instruction. However, ELLs are at a disadvantage because in addition to their lack of proficiency in English, they may also have less experience with the genre and register expected in their science assignments. So I noted this in my lesson plan, but I don't technically have any officially labeled ELLs, but since I do student teach in a kindergarten classroom, I kind of consider all of my students English language learners since they're all learning English at this point. But it is really important to get them to practice using those science vocabulary terms because I wanted them to be able to tell the difference of living and non-living things and using those vocabulary terms. Another thing was that during my evaluate, you mentioned how I was having only certain tables draw pictures of living things and certain tables were drawing non-living things, and you talked about how I could rotate. And I would like to do that, but due to just time constraints, I didn't really feel like I'd be able to get them to do 2 drawings in one sitting. But what I ended up going with was having them, after they draw their picture, I wanted them to come back to the carpet and share out what they drew a picture of. And so that way they are describing to each other, I drew a picture of a volcano, and I know that a volcano is non-living because it doesn't need water, it doesn't need food, doesn't need oxygen, those types of things, and having them go like that. So that way when they're, even though not everybody drew a picture of a living or non-living thing, at least they're all listening to each other's reasoning, so hopefully they're still making that connection. And then another thing I added in that I forgot to add, but you pointed out, was that to basically have ELLs also give them the opportunity to, if they can't write it out, maybe to orally explain or describe something that is an example of something that is living or non-living. So those are the changes that I made to my lesson plan. Again, thank you so much for reviewing it and giving me that feedback. Thank you.